Hi, everyone. This is our monetization bot channel, or bot panel, excuse me. I'm Ellen Huet. I'm a reporter at Bloomberg News. I cover startups, and as part of my job, I do some coverage on bots, or have written about them in the past. And I'll have our panelists introduce themselves, and maybe just start off with a quick explanation of what are you experimenting with monetization-wise, and who's paying? Who's the paying party in the equation?
Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. I'm Lauren Kunze. I run Pandorabots, which I think is the oldest and largest bot development and hosting platform in the world. We incorporated in 2008, and the platform has actually been around since 2002. So I can talk about a lot of failed experiments and also hopefully what's working.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Wasiljew. I work for Fandango. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are your online movie ticket destination for advanced ticket purchase. We have a messenger bot. We're really excited. We'll be working with the Facebook team on chat extensions very soon. We also launched our Alexa skill earlier in the year. From a monetization standpoint, today our main focus is on ultimately driving conversions into ticket sales.
Hey guys, my name is Pete. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Swell. We launched a bot called Swelly. You can check out on Messenger and other platforms. We recently reached 3 million total users and help people decide on things like what to wear, what to buy. And I'm here in this panel because we also built a market research platform because our community is all about sharing and receiving opinions. So it's very valuable for brands as a research.
Hi, my name is David Cohen, and I do product and growth marketing at eBay. We have a bot on the Messenger platform called ShopBot, and you can buy, obviously, the latest and greatest across all of eBay just by chat, image search, and a few other things that we're building in. And obviously, we monetize by selling products.
And I don't know if you guys can, sorry, is Swelly is the whale, and Pete has a tattoo of his company logo, which I think is really dedicated. Well done.
Yes, I was drunk, honestly.
Well, it looks great.
South by Southwest.
So maybe we can start with doing a little history with Lauren. Lauren, I know you do have this sort of broad-reaching history of what have people tried. So before we get into what people are doing today, let's talk a little bit about what did you see people trying with bots 10 years ago? What do you think people have learned now? How are people smarter about what they're approaching now in terms of trying to make money from what tends to be a consumer-facing, sometimes free product?
Sure, yeah. So back in 2002, when I was, I shouldn't say 15, I built a bot called the Lauren bot, which is still online today, and I put display ads up there, and I think I've made about $4. So that worked pretty well. That's almost 15 years.
Depending on how much you put into it, that's totally profitable. That's great. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I've still got high hopes. So yeah, that was kind of the model. Back in 2002, we had a button where you could automatically publish your bot to a web page, and display ads were popular. Bots were also big in AOL Instant Messenger, and in Second Life, everyone's like, virtual reality is coming. So everything old is new again. We had a really big monetization spike in the mobile app era. So we actually had a couple of developers who built mobile apps that were a bot, either for entertainment or there was a personal assistant called Skyvy, and they had about 10 million downloads. They were making enough money to support a team. One of those teams actually got acquired. So we saw some successes on that front as well. In terms of our personal monetization of the platform, we were completely free service until the end of 2014. We have a few 100,000 users, so we started monetizing then. We introduced an API management system and subscription revenue models. We've seen really good growth on the subscription side. And then we also charge consulting services for chatbot development for large enterprises where people pay hourly.
And what are they trying to get your expertise on in terms of consulting?
Well, usually the primary focus is on the actual building and implementation of the chatbot system. For the enterprise itself, it's not necessarily monetization. It's usually whether the bot is successfully making money or saving money or achieving some other kind of goal like user acquisition or brand awareness and engagement. So, yeah.
Okay. And maybe, Mark, you want to talk a little bit about, I know it's like, I guess under Fandango's larger world, maybe you don't have a mandate to be sort of showing profits right away for like the particular bot, but like what are potential future ways in which there could be particular ways to monetize the Fandango bot? Just talk a little bit more about how it works and what you're hoping could come in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, this is really an investment in the future. We're big believers in the platform, and we think there's a lot of potential to ultimately drive user conversion in commerce. Especially with something like chat extensions that's coming out. Going to the movies is inherently social. It's pretty rare that you go by yourself. And so when you can start interacting in those places between users and helping facilitate those conversations, to something that was said in the previous panel, you're starting to solve problems for the user. They're not going into our app, taking a screenshot, pasting that screenshot back into a message, and then going from there. We want to be able to facilitate that, make those steps easier for them, and that's where we really see the commerce flow, the potential of that commerce flow to start coming through.
So what does that look like? I mean, walk me through like an ideal interaction with the Fandango bot.
Sure. So when we launch with chat extensions next month, what we envision is you and I are having a conversation. We say we want to go to the movies. We're able to pull Fandango into that conversation. I can send you the Guardians of the Galaxy poster, and you say, that sounds great. Now we have to pick a theater. So whatever the local AMC theater is, you pull in that showtime, send back and forth. There's a buy button. You complete your purchase, and you haven't had to leave the conversation. And so being able to facilitate that and make that as simple and easy as possible, we expect will ultimately drive meaningful conversion rates.
And what's hard about doing that right now? Like, what are the...
Well, first we have to build the chat extension components. Yeah. That's coming. The other part that's hard is ultimately you're trying to triangulate these different variables, right? It's what theater, what movie, and what showtime. And through traditional channels, you sort of go one by one. And that's how we originally built our messenger bot. But the promise of NLP allows you to start to short circuit through those steps and actually make it an easier and faster experience for the user.
Meaning like a suggested answer rather than...
Possibly a suggested answer, or even being able to take the inputs that the user gives. So they don't say, okay, I want to go see a movie on Saturday. They say, I want to see Guardians on Saturday around 7. And now you can really narrow down those choices and say, here are your 3 options in your neighborhood. Pick your time and you're done. So you go from a 5 or 6 step process down to 1 based on what the user gives you and how well you can interpret that.
Very cool. Pete, you guys have sort of a different approach, right? It's allowing third-party market researchers to try. Talk a little bit more about like who's paying, what are they looking for, like what's valuable about what Swell can offer them, and like what does that transaction look like?
Sure. So for us, it was really important to have like no direct consumer monetization involved, because we just wanted to give a user the best possible experience and a place where it's all about sharing opinions, getting feedback, and make better decisions. So it shouldn't be about like having a money component involved. On a brand perspective, we thought having around 100 million opinions shared over the last couple of months, it's all about like voting on what you prefer and sharing your choices. And from a brand's perspective, we thought of creating a platform where brands can actually ask questions, and it's really that simple. You just ask a question, give us those 2 options, and then you get the detailed analytics on geographic and demographic data. Also working on more detailed data sets like psychographic data to learn even more about the user and understand your user better, but also, of course, to sell to a user. Ideally, we have brands that are in beauty, fashion, travel, and for that, it's really that the content is relevant for our users right now. Again, we have like 3.3 million total users so far. It's not an amount of users that ultimately is where we want to start monetizing big. It's just really about testing with some selected brands that we think work well with the audience. We did some good revenue so far. Yeah.
Like, what kind of brands are match the best with your users?
So one of our two brands that we worked really good well with is one is Swarovski. They build crystal company, so it's all about jewelry. And they ask questions like, what should we produce next? What kind of styles do you prefer? They really go into this manufacturing process where they actually ask the end consumer and use the data to produce better products, and also share the data with anonymous, of course, shared with their partners to help them creating better products. Another example would be Runtastic. They've been acquired by Adidas, and they do testing on which sports do you like? What kind of apps can we offer you? Also, they drive traffic to their own fitness bot, where you can actually train and have a fitness coach integrated in Facebook Messenger. So this is one thing to find out more about the audience by simple A/B votings, and then give the audience better content.
Awesome. And then, David, do you want to just talk a little bit about how, you're also sort of under a larger umbrella of, I think eBay probably has long-term goals and long-term views for what monetization. It's a little less strict of a mandate maybe, but talk about what are eBay's hopes for what what ShopBot could do, and what are sort of the goals for the next couple of years?
Sure. So ShopBot essentially is meant to be more of a personal shopping assistant, and one of the main focuses of it is that it's a new audience for eBay. The eBay, typically brings an older audience. We also, for the purposes of ShopBot, said for the moment we're going to put the seller side on the side. Obviously, sellers are a really important part of what eBay does, right? You don't have buyers without sellers, and vice versa. But we saw this as an opportunity to really explore a new channel and say, how do users who are in a messenger experience, who are not our traditional user, how would they want to shop, and how would they want to see eBay, and how do we want to try and show eBay to them? And so I think it was, for us, really about both building a new experience, which creates new challenges, right? The bot experience in general is new for everybody in this room, but also reaching a new audience. We don't know everything they want, and so I think what we're really trying to do is learn as much as we can about the users so that we can give that personal experience. For instance, when you search in ShopBot, unlike on eBay or on traditional search, you don't get thousands of results. We've actually built in features and functions to give what we call guidance to the user and say, hey, this is what's trending, or this is kind of the best value, and we actually check other apps and services, and compare them against ourselves and say, this is actually going to save you money. Over time, we continue to try and enforce that value proposition by using the information we have on the actual person chatting with us to make that more valuable. So you can go in today and say, hey, these are my sizes. I wear a size 10.5 shoe and 32 pants. And anytime I'm going to search or get a recommendation for those types of things, that's going to already be in my size. And so it's really about Messenger is a personal environment, and so we want this to be a personal experience in a way that you can't really do on a website or maybe in an app as intrinsically. So that's really where our focus is, and everything we're doing is built in-house. So we have an AI team, we have NLP, we have image recognition, and so that's all happening kind of within the context of the bot. And a lot of people don't think of that when they think of eBay. So it's also really unique because we're not relying on outside areas to help us. We're really trying to use all the data we have to make it as tight of an experience as possible.
So you really, and the overarching goal is to bring in new customers who might not otherwise.
Exactly. And so bring in new ones, and then again, all of the technology that we're building on the surface right now, just for Messenger, we can look at other things to do. So for the sellers, for instance, we are looking at a what it's worth component, right? That maybe you can just come in and say, hey, I have an iPhone 7, it's in like new condition, what's it worth? And right, we would just come back automatically, the bot would understand what that means and say, oh, well, you can actually sell it for XYZ, right? Because especially whenever a new iPhone comes out, that's a big time for us when users sell their old ones. And so it's thinking about what are those options like down the road.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about platform. So maybe we'll start there and then move this way. So then talk to me about where is ShopBot, why, where's the bot? What are the choices that led to picking like what the platform does, and then are there concerns that like long-term or short-term concerns on like things that you wish the platforms would do differently that would help your service or help your product in some way?
Sure. So right now, ShopBot is only on the Messenger platform. That decision was made around, I think, volume and scale, and trying, to really find a place where we can get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of the investment, because we're building so much in-house, right? I think that if it was a case where we wanted to just take the approach of quick reply only and really just kind of test and learn in that fashion, which we can and will be doing, it would be a different story. But I think the volume and scale that the Messenger platform provides really allowed us to say, like, this is worth all of the work that we're doing, knowing that, again, we can then use all of the things that we're building on other platforms, right? And that can be on voice-only platforms, conceivably. It doesn't have to be within the context of a Messenger bot, but that was the decision around, why start there.
Yeah. And is there anything that you wish that Messenger would do differently to make your life easier?
Like in the last panel was interesting. I mean, I think user acquisition really is the hardest part, right? Discovery. I worked in the app ecosystem for the last 6 years, and discovery there has really become a science, and I think we're very far from that, right? In the bot ecosystem, and so everyone's trying to figure that out together, and so getting the data right starts to become challenging when you're working in any single platform, and so we're all learning together. So that for me is sort of just how to figure out where do we go and how do we push that.
So our approach is a little different. We're on almost every platform for bots. We started actually as an app, and that's an interesting aspect. So we thought we wanted to help people on the point where they go into a store and they can't decide. That was the first use case. So we started as an app where you just take photos of options that you have and share and get instant feedback. As an app, it worked really well. You get feedback in seconds, and it's a product that people liked, but never really took off. So we questioned why is that, and why is it so hard actually for a user to onboard their friends to our product? And it's actually, if you think about it, it's actually not that hard. So when you use the app, you take photos, you share. A friend has to download an app, which is really a high friction, actually. And when we started with Messenger, it's so easy for a user to actually share content. It's just really about creating a Swell and A/B question, sharing it with friends that are already on Messenger or on another platform like Kik, Line, Viber, Telegram. And a user can immediately respond and help somebody with a decision or shares an opinion straight away without actually downloading something. So for us, it's really about being wherever the user is, being on every single platform, and we are playing with others like Slack, Skype, and also with voice right now.
And are there any particular advantages besides just who, I don't know, is it just really where your users already are and where they're most likely to act, or are there other inherent differences between the platforms that make your life easier for?
Yeah, so I think for Kik, Kik, we had a kickstart because the user, like the demographic, is just perfectly for Swell, really a young audience. At the same time, it's not as big of a scale as it is with Messenger. So for Messenger, we found it easier to grow an audience, and also Facebook Messenger team is very helpful on that in terms of giving feedback and helping actually make the core product better. So that's the difference between Kik and Messenger. I think what Telegram is doing a good job in terms of discovery and in terms of like bringing bots into actual groups, which Facebook now launched as well. But still, for Telegram, we found it harder to acquire users. It's probably because of the demographic. Another platform that works well for us is Viber, also in terms of growth. And I did not find out why exactly, but it's just working really well.
So just to echo the previous comments, I mean, Messenger was our sort of first touch point, again, because of scale, but also because we had that pre-existing Facebook audience that we could tap into, people who liked and followed Fandango. And so we had a marketing channel. Again, this is a year ago, before a Discover tab was a gleam in somebody's eye at the Facebook group. So that was sort of where we started. And then with Alexa as well, we knew we wanted to get into voice and start experimenting there and invest in that platform because we see the growth potential there. And so Alexa obviously had the greatest scale at the time and still does. So that was another place where we invested. And then you had asked about what else we're looking for on these platforms.
Yeah, or just like what's a wish list? Like what, I don't know, like what.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think the biggest wish list, and everybody's really proactively working on it, is just continuing to improve the NLP and the AI capabilities on these platforms, and being able to understand and interpret people's requests. Because as I think we're probably all finding out, you put a set of capabilities out there, but once you're in that bot environment, the user is going to ask what the user wants to ask. And once you get past the selfies and the not safe for work pictures, there's actual real requests that come through, and you have to be able to understand things like, I want to see a Disney movie this weekend, right? Which isn't a movie title, and it's not a theater name. And how do you then drive that user into that experience? And so that's sort of the components that we're working with those partners on today.
And so is that sort of more specific NLP something that comes from Facebook, or something that you would be working on your end to develop, or somewhere in the middle?
Today we're working with outside partners, so we're working with Facebook. Assist helped us with our messenger bots. We're working with them as well on basically teaching those systems how to interpret all of our data to make it more useful.
Okay. And is the challenge just like sometimes it's really still hard to interpret what a customer wants, and you like Swell, I think, has, like, for example, a pretty structured way of interacting with the bot, but something like eBay or Fandango, I mean, if you're trying to pull intent from a conversation, it can be really complicated, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can sort of make up as many scenarios as we want, and we still won't come up with all of the ones that are going to be presented. So, like everybody else, we're learning on the fly.
Cool.
Yeah, I say this a lot, which is that you can't design a conversational experience in a vacuum. It's really important to get something out early, because people will always say things that you did not anticipate. Even if you have a ton of data and you know what your frequently asked questions are, you're still going to get a lot of queries that fall outside that realm and are relevant, not the not safe for work photos that we all try not to see in the logs. So I think one of the interesting things that all of my fellow panelists seem to be saying is that the most valuable thing that we have right now and that your brand should be collecting is data, because that's the only thing that's going to make the NLP work in the long run. It also is valuable in terms of an actual dollar value. We don't license our data, but we've been offered a lot of money to license it. We've processed over 6 billion interactions between humans and chatbots, and we have a lot of data, obviously, and we've used that to make building chatbots easier, and also sort of automate. We know what the top 10,000 things people will say in general conversations, so we actually have open source frameworks to handle that. In terms of platform choices, we're hearing Messenger a lot, and that's what we hear from our customer base as well, though there's a very diverse spread. We have about 2,000 or 3,000 people signing up for the platform every month, and they're doing all kinds of different things, sometimes putting bots in surprising places that we didn't even think of. But Messenger, I think, is key, especially for bots that are trying to monetize, because I believe they're the only platform that supports native payments and location sharing, which can also be really important. So in terms of a brand that comes in with the goal of actually driving a transaction and completing a sale, ordering food, buying clothing, that's sort of the only logical choice, and it's still actually pretty hard to complete a purchase. Native payments is in beta. It's only in the US, so working with customers outside the US, we're still popping people out to a web view, and there are still a lot of steps, so friction is very, very high to actually buy something. We do have one retailer that went live a few weeks ago that's actually driving direct sales on Messenger now, but that's taken a lot of tweaking and experimentation and looking at the data, targeting, remarketing, but it's definitely promising, and we're getting there. So I think other platforms will need to support these features that make it really easy to let somebody say where they are and buy something truly with the tap of a button before people will actually start doing that, in addition to the NLP challenges that you mentioned.
Right, because when we were talking earlier, you said that affiliate is a really hard revenue stream to kind of capture, right? Is that a similar...
Yeah, well, I think for any consumer-facing bot, something that gets really popular and has a lot of eyeballs has an opportunity to monetize. I think the areas where we've seen success for consumer-facing bots are pretty exclusively in gaming. So the in-app purchase are actually paying for something that has kind of like an addiction loop in it. Makes sense. We did run experiments with affiliate marketing that have failed. I think that will be huge if you have like a really popular shopping bot and you're aggregating a lot of different retailers. Well, maybe you can talk about that more. But I think it will be big in terms of our experiment. We have one really popular, just like general chit-chat bot called Mitsuku, has a few 100,000 to 1 million interactions a day. And we're like, wow, we have all these people talking to it on all these different platforms. Like, can we make this make money? So we used that bot to run a lot of experiments, and one of them was affiliate marketing. And we thought, hey, like, wouldn't it be funny? Like, we signed up for Amazon affiliates because that was just the easiest. And we're like, wouldn't it be funny if the bot recommended like a movie to you on Amazon Prime, or just started like naturally talking to you about movies? So we like sent a broadcast message to all of our users saying something like, hey, what's your favorite AI movie? And then we got data back and we're like, I like Ex Machina, and by the way, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. And our like user group that we had tested flipped out and was like, oh my God, I thought you were my friend. Are you like an ad bot now? What is this spam? We got 0 signups for Amazon Prime. So I mean, maybe that was somewhat inelegant. But I like to think that, you know, if we don't necessarily know, even as an industry, what works, like at least we're learning what doesn't work or doesn't work yet. Timing is a big thing too.
Yeah. Well, what would you have done differently if you could go back and pitch Ex Machina again?
Well, Ex Machina was probably a scary movie for your best robot. I don't know how many people have seen the movie. I don't want to ruin it.
The robot, it goes to a dark place. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, maybe we should have been like, I'm your robot friend, and WALL-E is my favorite movie, because that's a happy robot movie. I don't know. I think it's just timing and relevance, right? So when we're looking at a retailer, we have a very specific product, and we can get very specific about the data. So we actually have, you know, like an add to favorites feature, which is sort of like an add to cart conversion. So if we see that somebody has favorited items, we can remarket specifically to them based on that. So I think that's like any outbound messaging has to be super relevant to things that people actually care about. And even then, it still could be creepy, especially because you have so much data from Facebook. Like, I can actually say, like, hey, first name, last name, and, like, I know what you look like because of your profile picture. I know how old you are. I know what time zone you're in. So you kind of have to just be very careful about how you use that data.
Just to piggyback on that, I think the other thing that we're all learning is that it's such a personal interaction. Right, you wouldn't walk up to somebody on the street and within like 5 sentences be like, "Hey, do you want to buy a movie?" Right? Like, you have to build a relationship over time, and I think we all have to be cognizant, especially those of us who are actually actively pushing product, to understand that people don't want to be pushed. Like, you have to sort of earn that trust and earn that right to be able to then message them with products and other offers.
Right. Well, since you deal in movies, let's just talk a little bit about the Google Home. I don't know if people remember when Google Home had a Beauty and the Beast ad, or maybe not an ad, unclear. It just like recommended, like, hey, did you know that Beauty and the Beast is coming out today and you can go see it if you like? And I think, my understanding is Google said it was not an ad, but it was one of these things where people really reacted strongly to it. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Like, is voice different from chat? Like, is that a different sort of relationship? It's called your Google Home. Maybe that changes it, but maybe, like, I don't know, people would be equally upset if Alexa did the same thing, or...
Yeah, I do. I do think it's possibly even more personal when you have somebody actually speaking back to you. With that specific example, Beauty and the Beast was probably our biggest movie of the first quarter, and it had a lot of pop culture relevance, and it had callbacks to people in their youth, and so there's a mass market for that movie. I can see where Google talked themselves into it. Obviously, it didn't perform as well as I think they expected, but again, they're experimenting just like the rest of us at this point. And so it's figuring out who does that message go to. I mean, to Lauren's point, you got to know who the audience is. You have to understand the data. I'm sure there's some people that appreciated the reminder, and obviously others that didn't. And so when you have such a personalized messaging platform, you can't do a mass broadcast.
I mean, then
whether it's an ad or not.
Is advertising ever gonna like break past the fact that it's like, will we get used to it? I guess is.
I mean, we've gotten used to it everywhere else, right? I mean, over time, advertising infiltrates everything. I mean, it's certainly something we've talked about and thought about, but ultimately, I think in that platform, it has to be really direct and personalized and to some degree almost invited. But it also, it has to be relevant. And so you have to be able to deliver that. And ideally, it's not just relevant, but it actually adds value to the experience. So it's more than just a pitch, but it's something that actually makes the bot more valuable to the user.
Also, I think in terms of advertising, I mean, a broadcast message will always suck. Just say, hey, buy this product now. But if it's context-based and it just really gives you something that you actually want and gives it to you faster. For example, in the fashion category alone, we have more than 1 million weekly interactions where people actually ask a question, hey, what should I wear? What should I buy? And stuff like that, and get real feedback by friends and by community people. So it's 1 million interactions within the fashion category about products and about brands, right? So it's only logical in the future to actually help people to purchase products that they actually like. But for now, it's just too early for us, and it's really about understanding the users better and helping also brands understand the users better. That's why we decided to go into the research rather than advertising space.
Yeah. And did you find that you couldn't make that? Was it hard to make that connection between, like, I'm picking clothing and then yes, I want to go here somewhere and buy this product and do some affiliate marketing?
I think it's not hard. We just tested it a little, like once with a link to a small brand, but we just found that how Swell works is actually you ask a question with two options, and after the duration time, which is either 3 hours or 24 hours, when a Swell is over, a user can send a message and say, hey, thanks for your vote. I decided to buy A, or I decided to do something completely different. I don't care about your opinion at all. And so this message is really, really important. And as soon as this gets spammy and this gets is about like getting brands involved and actually say, hey, buy this product now, it's a little bit too much. So we're really cautious about that and bring brands that actually get mentioned a lot on board. Like Nike versus Adidas, for example, is like a Swell that pops up every single day, multiple times. So people really care about comparing those brands. And also in terms of data here, what we realized, which is really interesting and exciting for us, is that Nike Adidas was like 70% Nike, 30% Adidas like 6 months ago, and now it's 50-50, and even like sometimes Adidas wins those kind of like battles. And I think it's what we also see with what happens with those two brands right now. The Adidas Superstar was the most purchased sneaker last year in 2016. So Adidas is just trending, and we can basically predict such trends in the very near future.
Then, David, you want to talk a little bit about the challenge of getting people to buy? The challenge of getting people to buy like a broad range of stuff, right? I mean,
first I'd say that your first mistake was doing the Amazon affiliate program, not the eBay affiliate program. No, I'm kidding. I think a lot about that kind of interaction, though, right? Like, how do we build a user base and give users what they're looking for at the right time? And that's where, again, it was touched on a little bit in the last panel, but I think there is tremendous opportunity for some bot cross-promotion, and that can be monetized in some fashion, whether it's an affiliate program or something else, because I think that if you find that right moment and you approach the user the right way, it can be incredibly satisfying for them. But figuring that out is going to take work, right? And so to Pete's point, doing something which is like super awkward, which is, hey, you looked at 2 items, how about buying it right now, is a bit aggressive. But I think that, maybe if you say, hey, are you interested in chatting with Nike about why you like them more, or something like that, I think it starts to shift a little bit the reasoning. And so I think from our perspective, it's really about trying to create those moments for all of the things we sell, right? And I think that one of the nice things is, and a challenge about eBay is we sell everything, right? So we have users that come in and they're like, I want a Coach bag, or they come in and say, I want a pair of shoes. Now those are both fashion items, but they're already quite different. But what happens when they say, I want a MacBook Air? And so it's really about understanding, like, maybe you came in for an error, but later you're interested in fashion, and how do you start to build that knowledge graph on the user to say what are your interests, where do they lie, and okay, you looked for fashion, so let's just focus on fashion at the beginning, and over time maybe you'll come back and say, well, hey, ShopBot, you were so good at fashion, and I know eBay sells everything. Maybe now I'll come look for a mobile phone. So that's also kind of the interesting challenge is how do you create that experience with the user so that you build the trust before you start just like pushing on the heavy sales side. And it's an interesting opportunity. I think that creating that personal moment is going to be key for everybody here.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll move to audience questions. So if you have questions, just ruminate on it for a minute. Another thing I think is really interesting, especially about chat extensions, and whoever feels like they want to weigh in on chat extensions, feel free to start, is that Facebook, then that sort of gives a lot of decision-making power, at least in my mind, to Facebook or to the platform, or when you have, the more that the platform is the distributor and the more that it happens almost automatically, the more that this entity, this third party between you and the consumer plays sort of arbiter of deciding not just who gets, whose service and whose bot gets suggested, but when and in what way. And if they do it right or wrong, then that is a reflection on, the bot as well. So, I mean, is that a concern that you guys often think about, and how is that something that is going into your future plans?
So let me start with what we did with chat extension. So we launched at F8 a feature called Swell, which is you open the extension, you open Swelly, and then you vote 10 times, and you see you can share it in a group, and then you see a matching score. Let's say you have 70% match with a friend in the group, and then you can start chatting about it. And what happened is actually things like, oh, what, you really like Coke more than Pepsi and stuff like that. So we actually trigger that people discuss their opinions that they shared. I think that's the extension and the combination with the group chat feature is a really big opportunity. Also for us about connecting people who share similar opinions is another aspect that we were looking into that works really well with chat, because it's all about connecting with people anyways.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is, over time, the gatekeepers have evolved, right? So it was broadcast TV and networks, and then it was buying on cable, and then it was SEO, and then it was relying on Facebook for traffic to your website, and so it's just an ongoing evolution. And so, I think we're going to see the launch of probably a new industry, SEO, for bot discovery in this space, and we'll all lean into it as much as we can, and work with these partners to ensure that the playing field works as best as it can.
And I mean, what ways can it sort of fall through? Is it just when there is too much decision-making power with the gatekeeper, or?
I guess I don't understand the question necessarily.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, well, it looks like David has some thoughts, so maybe I'll let him chime in.
Yeah, sorry. So I came from the app ecosystem and saw the evolution of ASO, and prior to that I was working in SEO, and so I think, you're going to have, I don't want to call it BSO yet because I feel like that's it's a bit aggressive, but I think that it's going to be, it goes back to understanding your whole marketing strategy, right? And that you're going to have to drive users in different ways. And so just like if you're running a multi-channel campaign today, you're going to do SEO, and you're going to do Google search, and you're going to do Facebook ads, and all of those things. But you also need to make sure that your app store text is tight, and you know exactly what is there, and that when a user searches, they're going to find it. I think it's going to evolve into the same thing, and obviously that's on one hand a bit unfortunate, but on the other hand it means that the ecosystem is growing, which is good, right? When there's competition and you have to start to think about those things, it means that there are users there that everybody's going after. And so if we're getting to that point, I think that that's a good sign, but you'll need to just include it as part of your whole thing. And I think I've personally at least been engaging with Facebook as much as possible to really understand what is that plan and that vision, because now you have it for the actual bot itself as well as in the extensions, as you mentioned. And so it does start to get complicated because now we're in two different potential places to say hey, we need to be in the top of the list. The user said iPhone, right? But everybody in this room can find out a reason that they should be number one because the user said iPhone. So it's figuring that nuance out is just going to have to be part of your overall strategy, and we're just going to have to include it there.
Does Facebook make it clear to you guys how those rankings are made, what the sort of page rank equivalent
I think
no?
just again to the earlier point is it's evolving, right? So again, if you went to Apple when they just launched, you're like, what should we do? It's like it gets gray, and you're just like, we'll try this and that, and then over time it becomes a science. And so it's a similar situation. I think there's suggestions, and you'll do your best to follow the suggestions, but then over time, people will learn how to game it. You'll kind of find that right middle ground.
So I think it's hard because, like Facebook, for example, if they say let's measure how many interactions a bot has and feature the bots with the best interactions and the most interactions, it's tough because some use cases like purchasing a movie ticket, you're winning if you have like less interactions rather than more. So it's really just at the beginning to actually figure out how to make that actually relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, but you bring up a good point. I mean, I think the way that the Facebooks of the world are starting is it's the lowest hanging fruit, right? If you're talking specifically about buying movie tickets, they're going to send you Fandango. If you're talking about movies more broadly, then it starts to get a little fuzzy. And I think right now they're sort of focused on that entry level, but as more and more bots enter the system and more opportunities exist, I think that's going to be one of their biggest challenges.
Right, like just picking the right bot for the right time.
And that goes back to the NLP and the AI conversations.
Questions from the audience? We have a few minutes, I think. I think maybe one of these mics needs to run out there.
Hey, good morning. Adam Riggs, CEO of a company called Rock My World. We're in the health and fitness space. And I'm curious if any of you have seen an interaction where a bot has said, would you like a recommendation? And then the user replies yes, or something like that, and then offers a recommendation, as opposed to kind of the reverse where it says, hey, here's something interesting, go get this. Have any of you seen an interaction, seen any success with that?
Sure. I mean, I think like anything, you need to test that use case, right? And I think that I have a friend, and they had a bot that asked the user their name, and it was really stupid because we know their name. But they saw that really increased their engagement, because for the user it was weird for it to say like, hi David. But when you said, hey, what's your name? I'm like, oh, well, I'm David. All of a sudden you've opened up that interaction. And so I think that I can't think of a specific experience where saying like, hey, are you interested in a recommendation is worked 100% of the time. But I think that if people are coming into a fitness experience, right, and they know where they're getting, or they hopefully know what they're getting, it's about finding that balance, right? When is the right time to say like, hey, are you interested in getting some info, versus this is what I can provide for you, are you interested in it, right? And so it is a bit of a push and a pull, and it may be that something like the first time experience you want to sort of provide, but later on you want to follow up with more generic questions to see which path maybe the user would prefer to be notified. And so A/B testing and figuring out like how do you segment the user to find that right message is just part of the game that we're all playing, right? Because they may respond yes, and then you send something, they're like, why the hell are you sending this to me, right? And so it's like then you go through a whole other issue. So it's just a test and learn phase right now, I'd say.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with like a big brand that has a Facebook page is that people are used to using it for customer service. And actually, usually the customer service traffic is pretty low to the page. It's like not a super active channel, but that's how the social media managers are also used to it. So it's really important to them to kind of ask the user up front, hey, are you here for customer service? Or do you want to embark on this like fun quiz about trends to find like your trend of the season or whatever? So we are asking people to opt in because the bot, we're trying to figure out how people want to use the bot. And then, like you said, it is very much an iterative process.
Hi there, I'm Rachel. We used to be Parent Hub, now we're Parent Spark. And we're more of an educational bot, less transactional. We're teaching parenting skills and eventually other soft skills. And I guess I'm wondering if you've seen any success with a B2B2C model. And maybe this is a question for Lauren, because you have kind of this storehouse of, of bots that you've seen. But we're considering how do we get this education out to our users, maybe through the routes that, that they come to other services. So, for example, through a preschool. Have you seen any B2B2C models that have been successful?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind right now is an English language learning bot in China, and we've actually seen a fair amount of monetization in language learning, either direct for like practicing with the partner and the sale of an app, now on a messaging platform because there isn't such a clear monetization paradigm. It's a little more complicated. One of the companies we're working with has government funding. So they're working with the government and they're getting into schools. So I think if you could become part of a curriculum or an add-on into another product, that would be one good strategy that I've seen work. Anybody else?
Great. I'm Brett Kinsella from voicebot.ai, and you guys should all read voicebot.ai every day. Talk about bots and voice in particular. Hey, I'm really interested in a Forrester report that came out last week, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they looked at Fortune 500 CMOs who were disappointed with display advertising on a number of levels, and were looking to shift their ad spend to interaction, conversational type of bots, both voice and chat. And so I'm interested in your perspective on this. I know we have a couple brands on the stage, but we have some people who serve brands as well, so you might have a unique perspective on this. When we think about the idea of customer service bots being sort of the first trend that a lot of brands use the bots for, but now we're talking about conversation, engagement, and those types of things, which could really be an indirect advertising channel. And just interested in your perspective on this, and particularly in terms of the types of advertising that you see coming forward in both the voice and chat space, and how this might be a little bit different than, let's say, mobile, where mobile was very good at serving existing customers for brands, but not really good at expanding the customer base. Is this an area where maybe chat and voice bots can actually expand and serve new customers as well as existing customers? So any thoughts on any of that? Thanks.
I still have the microphone, so I guess I'll take that one first. I think one of the really important things that you brought up is the idea of benchmarking against other channels. So CMOs and the marketing side of a company often have a lot of dollars to spend, and the question is, what are the ROI on those dollars, and where do you deploy it? In terms of display ad, we've seen things on Messenger and some of our bots where the company's click-through rate on a display ad is something like 0.2, and then we've seen a 25% click-through rate in a link served in the bot. So that's better by a large amount. So that's good. The other thing we think about, too, like in terms of how we price our services, is relative to other channels as well. So if you think about how much a brand spends on a television commercial and what they get out of it, it's actually a huge amount of money expended and not a lot of data back. Like maybe if they change the channel or what time zone they're in, or if they're streaming, you probably have more data. So if you look at something where it's actually a two-way channel and you can measure if somebody opened the message, if they read it, if they interacted with it, if they clicked a link, you're getting a lot more data. So I think people are really just starting to wrap their heads around that concept and how valuable that data can be. And we're starting to see a lot more dollars deployed. And actually, just in terms of an overall market trend, I think like the healthiest appetite for spending right now is coming from the marketing side of a company. Customer service is popular, bots for internal IT processes also popular, but those sales cycles are a lot longer and a lot more tends to be done in-house.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate that we're in a position where we're not having to chase the advertising dollars anytime in the near future. That being said, advertisers do ask about it. And I think, from our perspective, we talked a little bit about how it needs to be personalized, it needs to be relevant. And so you start to think, it won't be the equivalent of banner ads. We're not just going to slap something in there and hope for those 0.2% click-through rates. So from our perspective, there's a couple ways to do it, right? One is to go the Easter egg route. And plant something in there that the users go out of their way to find, and hope that's something that the advertiser appreciates, and then you can start to build something on top of that, where it's something that the user initiates and the user goes after. Beyond that, it's really trying to identify what is the most native possible way to implement those types of experiences, and again, in a way that it actually adds value. And I think the other thing is you're going to struggle to keep brands happy if all they want to do is reach your whole audience. You're not going to reach your whole audience with a message. It's got to be targeted, and it's got to be for the right relevant ones. And I think, if the data is good, you can actually add even more value to those advertisers if you do it right.
I mean, we've been approached a lot by advertisers that actually were interested in sponsoring categories. So a category that is, for example, action sports, and there's a brand that wants to advertise to those people. But I think, again, it's really all about context, and the big opportunity in chat is to understand the user, the customer, better than on any other platform. Same as with voice, just ask the right questions and learn from the user behavior. Even if, imagine like Facebook opening the open graph and gives us even more data about the user to give an even better experience to that, that's perfect. I don't want to get spammed by a broadcast message saying, hey, buy this now, but if I need a movie ticket, if I want to buy a new T-shirt, or if I want to buy shoes for my girlfriend, it should be where it can give me a really unique experience of giving me what I want at the time, and I don't even know about it, probably.
So just want to thank our panel. We have a little coffee break coming up, but we appreciate all you guys doing this. So if you can give them a round of applause, and then